Let me ask you something that most people avoid. What will you leave behind? Not your possessions, not your job title. I'm talking about your legacy, the imprint of your spirit, the echo of your strength, the mark of your resilience. Because one day your name will be spoken in rooms you're no longer in. And the only thing that will last is what you built with your heart, your mind, and your will. So I ask you again, what will your legacy be? We live in a world obsessed with comfort. A world that tells you to take the easy route, to do just enough, to avoid the pain. But legacy is not built in comfort. It's forged in fire. And if you want to leave something behind that matters, something that inspires generations after you're gone, then you've got to develop something rare, something unshakable. You've got to forge an iron will. An iron will doesn't bend when life gets hard. It doesn't fold when the pressure rises. It doesn't surrender when the odds look impossible. An iron will is the decision to keep showing up after everyone else has quit. It's the voice inside you that says, no matter what happens, I don't break, I build. It's the commitment to walk through the storm, not because you love the rain, but because you know what's waiting on the other side. Purpose, victory, impact. Understand this. There will be moments when no one claps, no one sees your struggle, no one understands your vision, but an iron will doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need a cheerleading squad to keep going. It moves in silence. It grows in the dark. And when the time comes, it rises, louder, stronger, and more relentless than ever before. Some people build reputations, but legends, they build legacies. And legacies are not handed down, they are earned. Through grit, through sacrifice, through relentless determination to keep rising when you have every reason to stay down. When your friends stop believing, when the plan doesn't work, when your energy's gone and your heart is tired, that's when your legacy is being written. That's where your iron will is forged. You've got to want it more than your excuses. You've got to believe in the future you're building more than the fear trying to hold you back. You've got to stand tall even with tears in your eyes and say, I was built for this. Because let me tell you, steel is not made without heat. Diamonds are not formed without pressure. And your legacy will never be forged without fire. Stop asking for the process to be easy. Start asking for the strength to endure it. The process is the proof. The pain is the price. And every single time you choose persistence over quitting, every time you choose discipline over distraction, you are stacking bricks in the house of your legacy. And don't just do it for you. Do it for every person watching you silently, waiting to believe that greatness is still possible. Do it for the version of you that was broken, that doubted, that almost gave up. Let them see what happens when a person refuses to back down. When they choose to forge their name into the stone of history with an iron will. The world doesn't remember the ones who had it easy. It remembers the ones who rose when it was hard, who kept fighting when it was unfair, who lit a fire so bright it sparked generations to come. Be that fire. Be that force. Be that person who didn't just live, they led, they lasted. They left something behind that time couldn't erase. So today I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be unshakable. To be that rare soul who trades excuses for excellence. That warrior who understands this life is temporary, but your legacy is forever. Forge it in pain. Forge it in silence. Forge it in every single moment you choose to rise. This world is not changed by the loudest voice. It's changed by the strongest will. So rise up. Forge a legacy. Not of gold, not of glory. Forge a legacy of iron will. Legacy is not something you stumble into. It's not something handed to you, bought or borrowed. It is something forged, like steel, through pressure, through fire, through relentless perseverance. And in a world where people quit over discomfort, where giving up has become easier than standing firm, the rarest quality you can build is an iron will. Not a temporary motivation, not a fleeting emotion, but a deep, unshakable decision to keep showing up, to keep moving, to keep rising, no matter the odds, no matter the pain, no matter the silence. A legacy of iron will doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what you do when it's hard. It's carved into the world by how you endure, how you carry yourself when no one is watching, and how you keep going when you feel like giving up. Too many people wait for the perfect moment. They wait for clarity, comfort, encouragement. But those who leave a mark on this world are not waiting, they are moving, they are forging. They are building their legacy, not with noise, but with action. And that kind of legacy doesn't begin with applause, it begins in the dark, in the silence, in those moments when everything inside of you is screaming to stop, to quit, to just rest, and you say, "Not today." That's how it begins. That's how strength is formed, not through ease, but through endurance. Not through hype, but through hard work that no one sees. An iron will is not about how loud you are, how strong you appear, or how perfect your plan is. It's about what you do when the plan fails. It's about how you respond when doors close, when friends disappear, when doubt creeps in and circumstances say, "You can't do this." It's when life tests you, and instead of shrinking, you square your shoulders, you clench your fists, and you whisper, "Watch me." That's where your legacy starts. Not in the wins, but in the will to rise after every loss. Not in the easy paths, but in the decision to keep walking the hard ones, and you won't always feel strong. You won't always feel ready. That's the truth no one likes to admit. Some days you'll want to quit. You'll want to trade your purpose for peace, your mission for a moment of rest. But deep down, that fire inside you won't let you. Because a person with an iron will doesn't give themselves the option to surrender. They don't live by feelings, they live by principles. They don't follow motivation, they follow mission. And the mission is clear: to forge a legacy that lasts. A legacy that says, "I was here, I mattered, I stood tall when it was easier to fall." You see, legacy isn't about fame. It's not about recognition. It's about responsibility. It's about what you leave behind in people, in lives, in hearts. Will you be remembered as the one who gave up when it got tough, or as the one who rose and kept fighting even when it looked impossible? That choice is yours. Every single day you are either building your legacy or burying it. Every word, every action, every decision is writing your story. And one day people will read that story. The question is, what will they find? You don't need to have it all figured out to begin. You just need to begin. You just need to rise one more time. Push one more step. Speak one more truth. Sacrifice one more comfort. That's how legacy is forged, in moments most people overlook, in choices most people avoid. You want to be remembered. Don't live like everyone else. Choose the path that requires discipline. Choose the path that stretches your soul. Choose the one that forces you to become something more than you were yesterday. The fire that forms iron burns hot. The pressure that shapes legacy is not gentle. But you are not built for ease. You are built for endurance. You are built to lead, to rise, to roar back in the face of adversity with a spirit that says, "I will not be moved." That kind of resilience doesn't just change your life, it echoes through generations. That's what legacy is. Not what you did one time, but what you stood for every time. Not what you reached when it was easy, but what you built when it was hard. So from this moment forward, don't aim for comfort. Don't settle for average. Don't live to please the crowd. Live to build something that outlives you. Let your will be your weapon. Let your perseverance be your proof. Let your story be the fire that lights someone else's. Because you're not just living, you're leading. You're not just surviving, you're forging. And when it's all said and done, let them say you didn't just exist. You left a legacy of iron will that no time, no trial, and no man could ever break. Life doesn't always come at you gently. Sometimes it strikes like a storm, fast and fierce, and without warning. It hits your health, your relationships, your finances, your faith, one after another like waves trying to drown you in doubt. And in those moments when you feel like everything around you is falling apart, when nothing makes sense, when even breathing feels like a burden, you are faced with a choice. You can collapse, or you can rise. You can fold, or you can stand tall, and when everything tries to break you, that is the precise moment you must decide, I will not bow to this. I will not be defined by the weight of what's pressing down on me. I will stand, not because it's easy, but because I'm built for this, because my legacy demands it. Because someone somewhere is watching me, needing to see that it's still possible to stand through the storm. Standing tall is not about physical posture, it's about inner position. It's about planting your soul like a tree and refusing to be uprooted by the winds of circumstance. When you stand tall in adversity, you are not pretending it doesn't hurt. You're not ignoring the pain. You're choosing to rise in spite of it. That's power. That's courage. That's the kind of strength that moves mountains, not because it shouts, but because it doesn't move when it's shaken. Because it doesn't quit when the tears fall. Because it keeps showing up when everything else in life says, you don't have to. You have to understand something critical. Adversity is not the end of your story. It is the shaping tool of your greatness. It's what reveals who you truly are when the comfort is stripped away. When there's no spotlight, no support, no applause. That's when your character is either carved or compromised. When you stand tall in those moments, you teach life that you are not made of excuses, you're made of endurance. You don't crack under pressure, you harden, you focus, you sharpen, you level up. There's a different kind of peace that comes when you've walked through hell and refused to bow. It's the peace of knowing that even if the whole world turns against you, you didn't turn against yourself. You stood for something, you held your ground, you fought with honor. That's what it means to have an iron will. Not to live a life free of suffering, but to live a life that refuses to be owned by it. It's saying, you can test me, life. You can push me, but you'll never own me. I decide how I rise. And the most powerful part, you don't have to feel strong to stand tall. You can stand with trembling legs. You can stand with a heart that's breaking and still choose not to fall. Real strength doesn't come from waiting until you feel brave. It comes from doing what's right even when your courage feels small. It comes from rising when you have every excuse to stay down and no logical reason to get back up, but you rise anyway. That's what changes everything. The people who make history, the ones we remember, the ones who inspire, they weren't always the smartest or the most talented. They were the ones who kept showing up when others gave up. They were the ones who stood tall when life tried to make them bow. And that same spirit lives in you. That same fire. That same potential to rise, to endure, to become something unbreakable, even in the most shattered season of your life. Because strength is not proven in ease, it's proven in opposition. So the next time life tries to crush you, when everything in you wants to run, to disappear, to stop fighting, don't. Take one breath. One step, one stand, and do it not for who you are now, but for who you're becoming, for the legacy you're building, for the people who will one day tell your story. Let them say you stood tall when it didn't make sense, that you held your ground when the world expected you to fall, that you were forged not by the easy days, but by the hard ones, because that is how an iron will is tested, that is how a legacy is written. And that is how warriors are remembered, not for never falling, but for rising again and again, taller each time. So when the pressure comes, and it will, you don't break. You rise. You don't beg. You build. You don't back down. You stand tall.